Okay, can I ask Saf, Kashif and Graham to come and join Sarah on the Good Morning couch? Now then, standing here I have lights in my eyes and wearing glasses, I always get a reflection. So if I'm looking for questions now, and we do have people with roving mics. So if you want to ask a question, I have two rules. Again, those of you who have been here before will know. Can you please say your name and from whence you come? And can we have a short, sharp question, please? Not a personal monologue. Okay, because if you do, I'll be quite rude and ask you what the question is. Okay, so who wants to ask the very first question of today's conference? It's always a privilege and a pleasure to do that. So let's have some hands in the air, please. Okay, yes, let's go. Lady there, please.
Good morning. I'm Maxine Room, formerly a principal now, working in consultancy in equality, diversity, inclusion. And for each of the panel, you know, given that we still have a long way to go, one thing that they think would really make a difference that they could do or that they could ask us to do.
Thank you. That's a really good question. Let me start with Kashif.
So your question was about what we can do differently to encourage inclusion. I think some of the panel already hit the nail on the head. I think there's something around the recruitment process and the language that we use and the allowances that we consider in terms of the balance that we should have. So I think partly in the recruitment, but then also starting early in schools, because we're all quite open to criticising career services in schools in terms of what they do, but you know, thinking about what we can do as employers and recruiters ourselves in terms of getting in there early and making our pitch. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sarah.
I think there's quite a lot that colleges should be doing, from my experience of seeing what colleges do, and that you need to be educating your companies, your SMEs. Corporates get the business case for diversity, for inclusion, and understand what they should be doing around inclusion. They don't necessarily do it, but they understand what they should be doing. SMEs really don't get it because they're small, they don't see the data. And this is part of what colleges should be doing. If you are going to be organizations that are supporting the community to grow, that support your learners to achieve their full potential, you need to be challenging employers, you need to be challenging your community. What I see is a lot of colleges just accept what people come in asking to do instead of actually sitting down with them and saying, are you sure that you're aware of all your options? That isn't happening. What else can colleges do, or what else can other organizations do? I appreciate, the Women's Engineering Society often says, look, there's a lot of organizations out there that focus on outreach and focus on recruitment. However, what we're not doing is looking at what happens to women once they're in some of these roles. So we know, for example, that more women are out of technical roles than in technical roles, even after training. So the drop-off for women in apprenticeships can be worse. Not always, but the numbers are so small we can't be sure about what's happening there. So I think Graham, some of your data showed that, didn't it, for some of your awards? And that's to do with the culture within the work, and male managers, colleagues, they've got to be educated as well about what some of the issues are.
Okay, Sarah, thank you very much. Saf, what's your view?
There's been a lot of discussion today. A lot of it at a sort of a macro level, some of it sort of specific issue-related level. If we leave that to the side, I mean, the bottom line is I'm a ordinary small business person. Some of you are here business individuals. Some of you here principals and other professionals. We have certain motivators in life, and you know, there's a motivator which is fear. You know, we all have that as a motivator. And we also have a motivator which is opportunity. Fear is Ofsted. You know, we're all worried about potentially not knowing our figures, not knowing our data. Data is a big important, it's a driving force to anything. compliance, perception, what the viewpoint of other people is, other providers are. It's a big motivator for all of us. Fear is a driver. It gets you going. You want to preserve what you've got. That's humanity to a certain extent. You've got to preserve what you've got. So if there's issues, if there's discussions, and people are talking about BAME and they're talking about numbers, they're talking about effectively there's a conversation going on and you're not involved in that conversation, you're out of context, you're not in a fantastic place. You're not in a good place. So there's drivers already there. It's on the agenda. There's a report out last year by Baroness McGregor Smith. If anybody hasn't seen that, it's a Ruby McGregor Smith review. Have a look at that. He talks about obviously not just we're not talking about small businesses there. We're talking obviously large organisations, FTSE organisations, and so forth, and that whole agenda. So you've got obviously fear, but there's also opportunity. And there's figures that we've talked about today in terms of obviously population, in terms of opportunity. If I wanted to say target, I don't know, white middle class males, and at the moment, they're not having a fantastic ride at this moment in time. But if I wanted to target those, I could. We talked about Google. We talked about technology, tech. We can specifically target whoever we want to target this day and age. If you wanted somebody, if you were in a market, say, which was very niche, and that's where the opportunity is. The opportunity isn't in the mass market anymore. It's niche. It's what they call the long tail to a certain extent. So when you're differentiating in terms of your business, you're looking at niche opportunities, and if you want to target, a niche market, you could target whichever sector you can. So from our perspective, understanding data is your first thing, and data to a certain, you've got to drive down the numbers, and it's not just the top level superficial data. And until you understand your data and you can make a comparison to that, you can't do anything really. I think that's the number one thing here. You've got to understand your own data.
Okay, so thank you. And Graham?
I think there's two. One, we as an organisation will continue to do what we're doing. And we will publicise what we find. We will continue to try to work with more and more colleges to try and address the issues and push away at a campaign. What I'd like to see, now we've got an Institute for Apprenticeships and soon to be technical education, and I actually think that's a good thing, yes, if it's managed properly. I won't talk about what I think about the implementation, that'll take another day. But the government at times is willing to throw millions at communication. When they want us to buy BT shares or whatever, they'll throw millions at it, yeah? When they wanted to bring in the pensions reform, they threw millions at it. You turn your TV on and you'd hear nothing but it. That's what they need to do about apprenticeships.
Thank you.
If you can thump that national, because people watch the TV, they'll see it on Twitter. We can all do what we can do, but the government needs to join in to do it as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question. Gentleman at the back there, please.
Thank you, Nancy.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Colin Leon from Career Paths Online. Very interesting conversation. Sarah, you mentioned about positive action. I've heard that word for about 30 years ago. So could you elaborate what it is in terms of what positive action could be to increase BAME and women into apprenticeships, please?
Yep, okay.
Thanks.
Sarah, I think that was aimed at you.
Actually, setting targets is positive action. So, doing things like advertising, in the case of gender, doing things like advertising in women's magazines, that's positive action. So, going to groups in the East End of London, to youth centres in the East End to offer opportunities, that's positive action. So by positive action, I mean actually don't be afraid to look at different ways of recruiting and also in your own organisation, different ways of promoting people through into leadership positions, into management positions. it is very important that we do this and not keep on doing the same thing over and over again. So when companies say we just can't find the people, what they mean is that they've been advertising in trade magazines, which of course the only people reading those are people in the trade. You know, it's that sort of thinking that we need to challenge.
I think that's a really interesting point, because in a sense we're often faced with a bit of a conflict between personal choice and arguably what UK PLC needs. And I think we all accept here today that UK PLC needs a much more diverse workforce, and we need more women, more BAME involved right across the sort of sectoral spectrum. But often that goes completely against what the individual wants to do. I was very struck by a not long ago visit to a local Job Centre Plus office. And upstairs in their training room, they had 24 young people doing a one-day course on being a sound engineer. They were very proud that they'd got 24 people doing this course. I asked the rather naive question, currently how many vacancies in this job centre do you have for sound engineers? And it may not surprise you to discover the answer I got was, well, we don't have any. So I then asked another naive question as to why they, in my view, were actually raising the aspirations of young people to do a job and pursue a career where there were no opportunities to do that. And why wasn't somebody actually sitting down with these young people and saying, well, you can do that, but there's no jobs. There's loads of jobs over here. And I think it comes back in a way to what both Sarah and Graham have said. Government needs to be a bit more interventionist, I think. I think it needs to stop saying this is all the job of employers. Government needs to be a bit more interventionist.
Can I add a little bit to that, though? Because actually that could be quite clever, that approach, as long as people are being clever and they're thinking through
I don't think they were.
No, I suspect from what because they didn't go zero but. You know, this is the story behind this. Because actually, of course, if you're trained as a sound engineer, you will have a lot of technical transferable skills that you can take to other. So I have come across colleges where they've very carefully used that approach to attract people in to then transfer them into other areas, but they have to do this very well and very knowingly and very expertly.
Sadly, they weren't that sophisticated.
Yeah, I guess so.
An example, I was the head of employment skills for London Olympics, and that was actually an example of positive intervention in truth. We were told it couldn't be done. It was against the EU procurement law and all the rest of it, so we ignored it. And what we did was to join up the chain. So we built 3 training centres, we trained people, we took them out of unemployment and we trained them towards a job. So we had good market intelligence of what jobs were needed. And we would give people tasters, you could have this job, that job, the other job, so they got an idea as to what they might do in the training centres, and we would train them and we would have the employers engaged and understand what was happening. At the end of the training course, they would interview people, the ones they liked, they put into jobs, and it actually was joining up all of the dots. And that was an example of real positive intervention driven by a major investment project. And I think that type of thinking, it's happening in Hinkley Point, which we're part of. So it's happening in certain sectors. That approach of using major investment or major change to join up the whole of the employment chain can be really powerful.
Just answer that the previous
Yes,
question,
no,
if you don't
go
mind.
on, Saf, yeah, please do.
Just again, keeping it very, very simple, you know, in terms of what can we do. I mean, we all live in a world of reviews. You know, we buy based on reviews. We sort of look at, you know, our decisions based on reviews. You know, there's a website that Lindsay's formed, which is FE Compare. That's the society we live in. You know, when you book a hotel, you look at the reviews. It's not just based on decisions on the website. It's a review economy. And reviews, testimonials, case studies, fantastic. You know, IBM talked about, you know, having Chris on the X Factor, you know, fantastic advertisement. That will inspire somebody. You know, that's what we need to be looking for. Case studies, testimonials, obviously, you know, examples of situations that everybody can apply. All of us can do certain things, and it's just picking those things off And sometimes what we find is that there's things that are taking place that as managers and leaders of organizations, we don't know. We possibly don't know all our positive stories. We don't know all the positives that we've done. It is actually getting that out and bringing that to the surface.
Okay. Saf, thank you.
Thank you.
And Kashif, give you the last word.
Just to add to that, I think employers need to be bold as well, and we need to be start to feel a bit more uncomfortable, let's just say. So at IBM, we run a program called Ignite. It's in partnership with City Gateway. So it's those individuals based in East London from deprived backgrounds, and we deliver a 6-week program where they get a bit of work experience and a bit of training as well to help with their employability skills. Now, this isn't easy. It isn't easy because they're not used. These young people, they come from challenging backgrounds, maybe being in trouble with the police as well, and they're not used to that corporate environment. So for us, it's very challenging because they come into our environment, into our big office in South Bank, and they can't hack the classroom environment or working sometimes, and they disappear in the building. We have to go and find them. But then that is a challenge for us, and that's something that we need to encourage and we need support to.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Can we give Sarah, Kashif, Saf and Graham a huge round of applause? Thank you very much indeed.
Think apprenticeship. Think pathway.